So, hello and welcome everybody to today's intersection campfire session. Today will be quite interactive. So please ask your questions whenever they can come up. I think that's okay for you, Matthew. But first of all, I want to introduce you to Matthew. Since his first conference, at Intersection when we met last year in Vienna, Matt gave an amazing presentation on his first ideas on EDGY, and since then, if I understand correctly, has been experimenting with EDGY for a variety of businesses, tech startups, innovation incubators, solopreneurs, even NPOs. And we are here to learn more from his finding because many people in our community ask us, are there any cases where any applications of EDGY? And that's why I'm super curious and super excited to have you here. And I want to hand over to Matthew and please say a few words about yourself. And then I think we keep it interactive, right? So just hand over to you and let's get it going.
Perfect. Sounds like a plan. I'm going to share my screen. Thank you for the presentation, for the introduction. Wolfgang, as you were mentioning, my name is Matt. Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm from Canada. I have a very diverse use case to present to you today. But before I start with that, just a little presentation about myself. If you have known me, you know that I like to bridge everything related to return on investment and user experience. But in the most recent year, as Wolfgang was mentioning, I've been doing that with EDGY, most likely, because my roots are in finance. My passion and my experience in the last 10 years have been all towards digital product management, conception, and deliveries. I've been product owner, product manager, project manager in the digital field. But I have to say, since I have been introduced to EDGY by Jean-Sébastien, who's also on the call with us, that was probably at the end of 2022. EDGY has been a godsend for me because a lot of people, they're experts in their own field and they stay experts in a very long while. My profile, I've always been interested in multidimensional projects. Like, for example, the first project I was product owner on, it was a project that people wanted to do the agile methodology, change management for the agency I was working for. We wanted to build an MVP, a minimum viable product for the client. We wanted to simplify and really streamline the experience. It was a complete overall rebrand on a global basis for a very well-known company on the New York Stock Exchange. And on top of all, the identity of the business I was working for wanted to change because they wanted to be seen as digital savvy. So it was, excuse the expression, a clusterfuck of objectives and desired outcomes. And at the time, I didn't have EDGY, and it was, very tough to navigate all of this. But unfortunately for me, in the last year and a half, I have been able to, I would say, present and understand and analyze these type of very complex projects in different dimensions and putting words on them and being able to interact with people. And that's why in the last year, I have founded my own consulting firm, Stoics. And what do? We do product management, obviously. We do workshop facilitation. Given my background in finance, I also work on the investment management aspect of things. But when I say investment management, I also not just talk about money, I talk about time, I talk about clarity, and I talk about engagement with all the different stakeholders. And this is really where enterprise design, in my opinion, really creates something that has been not seen so far, because it lets you question all the different aspects of a business decision, of a business project, and it really helps people gathering over a simplified and a visual and a shared language. This is something that I haven't seen in my career. And as Wolfgang was mentioning, it was a turning point for me. I did give a conference talk last year about how it changed my way of looking at product management. I actually applied EDGY in the middle of a mandate where I was building a software as a service, a SaaS product for a 3D studio. Unfortunately, I wish I had it at the very beginning because it really helped me identify the things that were missing in the picture for this product to be successful. And that's exactly why I founded my firm right after this journey in Austria. See, your little flag is there, Wolfgang, to mention what has been my journey so far since we've met for the last Intersection conference. I have been involved with some founders from an agricultural tech startup. I have been with an innovation incubator. I have been involved with EDGY also with a mediation consulting called Tirco, a startup in 3D technology called EDGY. There was another collaboration with the people from &Friends, Eric here who is in the room, for this accelerator, this innovation incubator that we will keep confidential for right now because we're under an NDA for this project. And until very recently, I've also been involved in elite sports technology ecosystem, but I will be talking about that at the very end. So since November, obviously, there was my first client, so to speak, which is called Arrivage. And by the way, this is going to be an interactive presentation. I'm just going to tell you what happened, what was the experimentation that we did with all these different clients and companies. But feel free to stop me if you have questions or if there are some things that you would like to discuss. This is supposed to be interactive. This is supposed to be informal. I put those little icons there because there are many angles that I can take this conversation on. And I'm a very visual person. So this is why I started to do it with the edgy colors, but I will be giving you a little bit of context all over these little icons that I put. So for Arrivage, this is an agricultural tech startup. They have been in operation for almost 5 years now. And the very key need was building product management capabilities when they approached me. So obviously it was very blue focused. They were focused on the product. They were also focused on the organizational basis of their challenge because they have been collaborating with a new structure. They were Inc., but they also opened an NGO structure so that they can help better the ecosystem. But at the very beginning, we went back and looked at all the different story map of everything they've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years and even before. But what I did is I mapped it out with all the different cash flows that were coming in and out of the company. So it was sort of a story map, but linked to all the cash flows. And I did that with the founders at the beginning. That was the first experimentation, but also sort of audit for me with this company. And it really helped me understand how they were even themselves valuing all the different activities that they were doing. Because some of them were very cash flow centric, not very mission oriented, and some had very strong mission related aspects. But in terms of cash flow, they weren't really relevant. So that was very interesting to challenge them on that. But that was in November of last year. And then we continued at the end of last year. Obviously, these guys, they are 2 founders. They have a team of 10 as a startup. They are extremely, you could say, tired at the end of the year. So instead of going into very technical knowledge and activity, I decided to start something, to test something with them. And given the fact that they are in the agricultural space, I did what I call the edgy emoji test. So I mapped out everything that I learned in a month with them with emojis and almost emojis so that it can be easily scanned by them. They can really see my work of what is my understanding of their whole business. And then they can add after that all the different aspects. So they don't have to start the workshop that we were doing just by reading on the screen. They were just scanning very quickly, and then they were adding to it because of the cognitive mental fatigue at the end of the year. These guys, they were just super tired, so they really appreciated that, and actually it helped us simplify our language and getting to the essence, because as you know, emojis are a language by themselves. They are like an alphabet. You have certain codes, you have certain systems in the different emojis, and it helped them not getting too much precise with words, just getting to the essence of the words and everything that they were doing. I will be talking more about that on the next conference in Rome, by the way, because the use case that I will be developing, there was a lot of activities for Arrivage. This was part of it. So after this very interesting exercise, another experimentation that I did with them is, if you're familiar with the jobs to be done framework, this is a framework that helps user experience specialists, most likely, to understand what are the relevant tasks that people want to do in their lives. That's why you have the GTPD, by the way. This is a jobs to be done. And we were tying them to their purpose portfolio. So we were really looking at their mission-centric activities, and we were comparing them with all the different tasks that their stakeholders, their clients, and even their organization want to do, not just on a functional way, but also on a social way. And that gave us two very interesting insights, because this is really where you can see if you are doing things for what people want to do on their daily basis, their daily lives, or if you're helping them achieve something that is bigger than just their daily schedules. This is the very value of the jobs to be done framework. And then after that, we went to a more SCAN approach. This is the enterprise SCAN methodology that was put on by EDGY and his team. And this is something that we attempted with a new group, the NGO Board of Directors. This was very interesting for the mission part, the very green part of EDGY. But I would say that this was a very big learning experience for me as well, because in the case of Arrivage, the board didn't really have the context of all the different activities that we were doing. So from the mission critical statement, it was very interesting to do the SCAN, and we really got them into a super interesting rhythm when they were doing the workshop about that. But for the rest, their relationship with the capabilities and the experience, it is not exactly the same, and we lacked some time and context to provide all the different you could say subtleties of EDGY with these people. So the enterprise scan was super helpful for us. I'm not sure it was super helpful for the board, but hey, it was my first experimentation with the enterprise scan as well. However, what is really interesting is the results. As I will be mentioning in the next conference, I experimented also with what I call the enterprise roadmap, because if you remember the capabilities that they were looking to build at the beginning, they were very product driven. But as I was building all the different business cases and all the different aspects of the business, I ended up building an enterprise roadmap with them. And that's where it really hit us and hit them in the face, excuse the expression, because even if we focused on building more features, there were some blocking very key elements for the growth of the Inc. company that could not be answered by a good product roadmap or good product management capabilities. It was organizational perspective that was put in the mix, and that was a very key moment that I will be obviously developing more in the conference in Rome in next September. But what's really interesting also, and that was a complete surprise for me, is that one of the founders, he told me, hey, by the way, not only is this very therapeutic, those exercises that we do with EDGY, all the different workshops that we do, but he also told me it inspired me a new web page for the ecosystem audience that we're trying to target more and more. And I was like, wait, what? You did a web page out of the context and the content that we did with all these workshops? And he said, yeah, actually, it gave us a new web page that is really critical for us, because they had the salespeople, the people that are getting sold the platform that they were building. They also had the overall people that were buying, but the ecosystem among these people, they were sort of lost in the mix. So that was super interesting to see that all the different keywords and elements that were getting out of EDGY were back into this webpage and almost 100% faithfully executed, because some of the key terms that were coming out in our EDGY activities, I was seeing them on that webpage. So that was super interesting. As much as the increased engagement for everything related to the board, the board of directors, because as I was mentioning, a startup company in tech is not always easy to understand everything that they do, and they are very product focused. So by having EDGY and getting them to understand all the different dimensions of the business, it really built something much more clear and less tech focused with the NGO. So that was a very interesting result as well. So this is the very first use case that I've been working on since November. These are my, you could say my own innovation incubator, because I have a relationship with these guys where we test things. They allow me to do the crazy stuff like the edge emoji sort of exercise and learn from it. And actually, I really enjoy everything that I've been doing with Arrivage so far. And they call me their therapist. So that's pretty funny, because these, as I mentioned, EDGY gives you the time and the headspace to talk about things that you wouldn't talk about otherwise. And for founders, they told me several times that it's super important. So that's just for that. I mean, it's always worth it to be experimenting with these guys. The second use case, which arrived at the end of last year, was innovation accelerator that I've been in contact with for several years. And in this case, it's the service team that approached me, and they were saying, look, we have a very nice offering for our clients, which are the big organizations in their own industry, the big innovators. And we want to expand the offering. We would like to do some sort of accompagnement. I don't remember how you say it, some sort of very consulting-like offering for these people. And the very first thing that we did with them is looking at all the different activities that they wanted to do with those clients and prioritize them in terms of, okay, is this mission-centric? Are you trying to build capabilities for these people? Or are you trying to just give a better experience on making them understand how to deliver a better experience for their different stakeholders, their different clients? So that was super interesting to do. And after that, it was really a matter of, okay, we want to do this offering. Let's look at the benchmarks. We look at all the different, for example, the board of innovators, everything related to the business model Canva as well. And we looked at, okay, given the fact that you want to do this and this and this, how do the benchmark in comparison help you feed those mission-centric, capability-centric, or task-centric aspect of EDGY? And that was super interesting to see how some activities can look super nice to be offering, but they won't be leading you the outcomes that you want to do, right? And the other part that was super interesting to do with these people was everything related to how we cast the different and the most important people that we want to ask questions about in these consulting offering. There are some, obviously, we call them the champions in all these different big organizations that were the clients of this innovation accelerator. But at the end of the day, you cannot survey everyone, and you want people at the table to deliver a certain outcomes if you want them to renew the experience and renew the consulting with you. So that was very interesting, and it actually gave us to some unexpected outcome that I will be talking in a bit. Obviously, they built internal capabilities in terms of really understanding how you structure an offering. It also gave one of the service team an opportunity to talk about EDGY in a paper for his master's paper at the Hautes Études Commerciales, HEC Montréal. And one of the things that were kind of unexpected, and this is like a cliffhanger in some of your favorite movies, it actually gave us a complete rescoping opportunity of this very project. So stay with us. We will be talking about this use case, but a bit later, because I'm following my timeline here, as you can see. So I will be putting that one on ice, and I will be switching to the very next one, which is a consulting firm called Tirco. This is a solopreneur founder who was, you could say, she was surrounded, overwhelmed with opportunities in her case. She is a teacher at university. She has her own consulting firm. When we were talking, she had some partnership opportunities that she was getting requested to, and even some collaborations. And she's just one person, right? So she cannot do all these things. So the first thing I did with this person, who's also a friend of mine, by the way, is getting an audit. And it was really looking at, okay, from a mission-centric perspective, what are you trying to accomplish with your career, with your past career, everything related to your own story as an entrepreneur? What kind of story do you want to build for your company? What are the things that you want people help accomplish? How is your brand being different? You know, all these things, we audited them, and we did a workshop of just throwing things on the wall, so to speak, to better understand what is your essence as an entrepreneur and for your business as well. And then it just evolved into, okay, what are the tasks that are the most significant for you that you want to help people with? Obviously, there's a lot of opportunities and partnership, and some are very big names, but at the end of the day, we understood that this person wanted to help people become their own teachers, right? So when you understand this, it really helped her focus on the capabilities that she wants to build internally. So instead of spreading her whole career opportunities, time, and even skills all over the place, it really helped us focusing on the different skill sets that will make her really deliver on that promise of people becoming their own teachers and their own mediators. She doesn't want to do everything by herself. She wants to build an ecosystem around her own field of work. And that was really, we're not going to get into the esoteric part of things, but what was really interesting in this case is that it really helped us have more mindfulness about how she was doing things. You know, like when you're solopreneur, most of the times you do things mechanically. You don't really think about what you're doing or why you're doing it. So it really help her take a step backward on what she was doing. Even so that she contacted me a couple of weeks ago, and she told me, you know what? I am so much more focused on what I need to do that I've started building my own website. She's built a sitemap that we're going to be reviewing next week. I'm very curious to see how it's going to go, but what she told me is my very first source of information for building this sitemap was the EDGY work that we've been doing. So this is and just for the record, it's not because I have been working in digital products that the two clients have been talking so far out of three. They've been building websites out of EDGY. I think EDGY gives you a perspective that really helps you cluster all the different type of information and simplify them to the point where you can communicate them through a website. Because when you work with post-its only, you don't have the choice but to simplify everything that you're offering. And I don't think it's a coincidence if 2 out of 3 so far have been building websites. Yes, Wolfgang, you have a question?
I have two questions. One is you call this an audit. What's the difference to the scan? Is it what is an intentional decision to call it an audit and not a scan? Or you did not use Helge's tool, but it was a similar thing like a scan? What do you mean by audit?
it's a very interesting question, because this idea was not mine. It is a mentor of mine that I've been talking to and saying, listen, I think I have something that can really help the consulting business go elsewhere than we're used to. And when he told me, it's like, okay, but if you go against other consultants, every consultant, or if you hire, for example, an accounting consultant, he arrives and he does an audit to your company before he does anything else, right? He told me, you should always start by positioning yourself as an expert who will do an audit in the company. The difference is, compared to, for example, an accountant who arrives with a calculator that will just look at the numbers, and someone empowered with EDGY, to me, arrives with 6 calculators with different metrics, but they all talk to each other. And at the end of the day, they are all interrelated. And this is why I have started putting this auditing phase in the very beginning, because to answer your question, Wolfgang, at the very beginning, I just ask questions and I let people tell me their own stories. Sometimes it goes into capabilities, sometimes it's in their experience. Those people, they're not familiar with EDGY yet. It is only for me. And I just map out all the different information that they give me. Instead of doing it in a Word document, I just map it out on EDGY. And then I see all the gaps. And that's actually, ironically, the very first thing that I did with EDGY at the beginning, when I was introduced by EDGY with Jean-Sébastien. I was just in a big, huge meeting with all the different stakeholders at the company I was working for, and everybody was concerned or even pissed at some things. And I didn't say a word. I just mapped out things, and then I saw the gaps and where I should be working next. So this is why I refer to it as an audit. To me, the scan is a much more structured approach that can come right after. But the audit is simply a way to position myself and also to make people understand, look, I'm just gathering information and putting it in different perspective in my head. And it's probably the interesting part is that for all these different cases, it all started with the audit phase. For me to better understand and see all the different dimensions and know where to scratch the itch after that. But unless you see all the different dimensions, those 6 of them, for me, it's like going blind in front of a problem.
Yeah.
That's why I really love this audit
makes sense. Okay, thanks. Good. And the second question is, in that case, you connect tasks directly to capabilities. So you didn't use the product intersection intentionally, or
yes, because to me, the intersections are consequence of the bigger decisions that you want to do with those 3 facets that we have, which is the identity, the architecture, and the experience.
Okay.
And when there is clarity on this, then you look at the manifestations, to me, of your architecture and your experience, which is the product. And this is something that I've been educating, so to speak, my clients on. And I mean, I'm the first guilty as charged person. I am a product manager. We always talk about brand, we always talk about organizational aspect, and we always talk about product features. But at the end of the day, if you're not mindful of all the different outcomes that you want to achieve in the 3 different facets, you can build a very nice product that is being shipped, but that will not have the outcomes that you're expecting for your company, for your employees, or for your stakeholders.
Makes sense. I mean, it makes sense to me to have an outcome first approach. So you focus on purpose, green. In that case, maybe you did not focus so much about purpose, but on customer tasks and capabilities, which are outcomes first, and product second. I think that's also a big statement. And I think many of us do it in a similar way.
Honestly, I think it's you can tell that you're annoying, so to speak, your clients when you do this, but when they understand why we're doing it, and you make them see how it's going to make them think differently about their business and about their outcomes, then they follow. The very first thing that I did as a mistake as a consultant is talking too much about EDGY, the different dimensions. Now I don't talk about it at all. Sometimes they say, hey, what are those different weird colors? And I'm like, oh, this is my internal system for auditing all the information and making sure that they're all interrelated and see how they are interrelated. And then they say, oh, that's interesting. Can you tell me about that? And they're like, oh, okay, please continue. But it doesn't stop the flow. And most importantly, it still keeps you focused on the outcomes. So the next one is the same innovation accelerator, but a different stakeholder. It was a program manager from a cohort that was in a growth phase. And they approached me, they basically asked me, hey, we need someone with project management experience to do this type of consulting mandate. Are you interested? And I was like, and he was telling me about the whole case, and I was like, yes, but on one condition. I arrive this, if I do this, I do it with my own perspective, which is enterprise design. And I told him a little bit about it on the phone, and he was like, okay, I'm not sure I understand everything, but that's interesting considering what we need to do. So yeah, that's good. So next thing we know, we are 3 mentors, so to speak, in front of 13 startups that are in a growth phase. And we're building a scorecard so that people who are not cognizant with EDGY at all, they can actually do an audit as I was doing, but in a matter of 1 hour. This is probably the use case that makes me smile the most, because this one, I am not the only one using EDGY. I just did a matrix in Excel. I built that with them so that they can really understand. We took like an hour of work or something, or 2 hours, I don't remember. And I was like, look, this is going to help us understand the why they're doing things, the how they're doing things, and what they're doing, and see all the different intersections at the end, the product, the organization, and the brand, see if those are taken into account as well. And we met with 13 startups in 3 days. Sometimes for the first time, me, it was my first time. Some, my other colleague, the other consultant, she knew a couple of them. But that's also the benefit of EDGY, right? Because you really get to talk with people on the same level, whatever your background is. We look at all the different ways. We do the interviews with all the different founders of those startups. And we even did the debriefs between ourselves, because it goes super quickly, right? An hour interview is nothing when you want to understand how people are going to use a budget for a growth program or a growth project. And it was really helpful because it's a visual, it's colorful, and it's simple. So when it comes times to debriefing all the different meetings, we're probably like sometimes it was 10 minutes, sometimes it was 30 minutes, but we were like, okay, what's strong for you? For us, it's the why. Oh, for me, it's the what. Oh, interesting. Me personally, I thought they were very strong on process, but not very strong on this. And then it just gives a common language so that we can not debate, but compare our different opinions and perspective on everything that was being told by those startups. And the outcome was super interesting is, yes, we get those scans for those 13 businesses, but we also give them homework. Because if we say, okay, I think you're lacking on the overall journey of your customers, you should do this exercise with your clients or with your team on this. And another outcome, another result that was super interesting is the overall EDGY adoption, because even without me asking for it, this program manager from this innovation accelerator, he started spreading out the scans, the scorecards that we had internally, so that the people have this as a tool, a leave behind when they get out of the interview, that they know exactly what we think are their strengths or weaknesses. But also he gave the reference to the intersection enterprise.design website if they want to know more about our methodology. So not only it does EDGY adoption internally for this innovation accelerator, but also for the 13 startups that they are working with. So that was a very nice surprise. Again, all the greatest outcomes actually are the ones that I never expected to be so far. And that's the best part of everything that I've been doing. I'm going to continue if nobody has questions, because I can see time flying, and I do talk a lot. So I'm going to try to go a bit more quickly. The next one was a 3D tech startup. It was an old colleague of mine who is really, really a smart guy. The guy built his own game engine, for those who are a bit familiar with the terms. And he wanted to launch a new platform. So I went ahead and I listened to everything that he's been researching for 1 year or two, his whole story as an entrepreneur and as a person, and all the things that he wanted to change in this world, basically. I did an audit. After that, we did the whole slew of different facets workshop with this person. But what was really interesting in this case is that he's wanted to launch his platform, but he also wants to finance it. So what I did very interestingly with this customer is I told them, look, I'm going to do the mapping of your things, but I'm going to do it in a very peculiar way. I'm going to map it out so that we can build an investor pitch based on the Kawasaki model, because Kawasaki model is a very well-known investor pitch template, so to speak, but it can be disjointed. So when I looked at the Kawasaki model and I recognized, okay, this is this part of EDGY, this is this part of EDGY, this is this part of EDGY. So instead of just building an investor pitch, we built the content for the investor pitch through the task mapping, the purpose portfolio, the capability mapping, and we're right now building the pitch for this entrepreneur, as much as we are focusing all the different communications activities and features based on a very successful launch for his recent platform. He now has more than 400, I think this is outdated, this is like 600 or 700 users now. So this is also a super interesting use case because it is not only the product side, but also the business finance side. This is probably the case that looks the most like my own background. So if I go back to that cliffhanger that I was telling you about, when we did the rescoping for everything that was happening with that innovation incubator for the service team, it ended up being, okay, we need to provide meaning to this offering that you guys want to build, if you remember here. But the only way we're going to do this is by having a very custom approach for all these different big partners that you're trying to service. So what we did, and I say we because this was a collaboration with the guys from France, Eric Latat, who's on the call with us. So if I go here, what we did is look at all the enterprise scan questions, and we turned it into an innovation-based survey questionnaire. And we really started from all the different work that was done by EDGY and the team, but we adapted it to the reality, so to speak, of innovation managers. And it not only gave us a very special and interesting and useful survey questionnaire, but it also gave us what we call the pathway, which is when you start on EDGY, you have a starting point and you have a sort of an ending point where you want to go. And sometimes there are some spots in EDGY where you want to stop and you don't feel for gas, you feel for information. And we were planning with the service team in advance on these interviews that we were doing with the big innovation companies. So it was helping us for a diagnosis. It will help us for the roadmap that we want to build that is part of the offering. And even on the more longer term, this innovation accelerator wants to build metrics for innovation. And this is exactly what EDGY and the 6 dimensions aim to do. Because at the end of the day, they want to be able to finance their overall projects and their overall activities with these types of insights that we're gathering. So metrics are obviously a big part of it, so that they can also follow from year to year all the different activities. It is still a work in process. It is a huge project, so to speak. And Eric, if you want to intervene to add something that I may have.
Yeah, just for the context, to help you understand, those company we work with for the pathway and the diagnosis is like Hydro-Québec is the main electricity provider for the whole province. It's like OBB in Austria. We have Loto-Québec with the company that manage all the games and casinos in Quebec province. It's not small business, so mapping innovation into those complex environment is crucial if our clients want to be able to help them and to really focus on what everybody needs. And there are 17 of them with different realities. So it's quite addressing a lot of complexity, and clarification for them is the only way they can make a real effective pathway for each environment. So it's like we want to have one process for 17 different realities to make personalized pathways for each of them into very huge companies. So yeah, it's quite special, but we have to learn and adapt.
Thank you, Eric. Wolfgang, I think you had a question.
Yeah, just a remark. Recently, Jim and other people, we've been discussing the concept of roadmaps and pathways. So it could be that pathways or roadmaps could be a concept sometime in the core of EDGY. I mean, that would be powerful. Now, currently, we have a model. We can map it out using EDGY models or EDGY statements. But if we add time and say, okay, next year we have this and that step and step and step, what's our pathway to a target state that we will never reach, because there is no such, never a thing like a target state, because it's ever changing, I think. But it's a good idea to have multiple snapshots of models.
Yes, and I'm actually reading a lot about change management and change design. And for this particular client, we did it with an innovation lens, but I really think that it could be adapt for those needs. And yeah, we will have quite good use cases to show in the coming months.
That's good.
And one thing that is super interesting as well is, as you can see, this overall thing started in December 2023, but it was mostly me, Stoics, my own consulting firm, who was looking at how can we build roadmaps offering. And then as we went through with EDGY, we discovered, okay, roadmaps are going to fit one need, but we need more. So when it's time to onboard more people, more projects, it is still the same language, right? So I think this is one thing that is probably most forgotten about the power of EDGY, is that it federates other language and other projects. We're talking here about product management capabilities. We're talking about financing a startup. We're talking about just helping an entrepreneur figure out what opportunities she should be focusing on. We're talking about helping all the different innovation giants of an industry in a whole province, figuring out how they can better innovate. This is as diversified use case that I can possibly present you, right? And the very last one, like it wasn't already enough, unfortunately, it had to stop recently. But the last one is a bit of a head spinner.
I have a question, Roy. I mean, now you have been talking to a lot of cases, but this is just talk, and so how have you really done this? So what is under the hood based on these small icons we have, portfolio, and so on. So I mean, for me, for example, that would like to understand, can I apply this? I mean, what we are doing today in this session is, I appreciate all the things you're saying, but that doesn't help me to take next steps. So how should I go ahead and do what you have been doing here? So how do I describe offerings? How do I describe the prioritization, benchmarking, casting, capabilities, and so on? So yeah, for me, if you have time over today, I mean, feel free to share a little bit about that if you can.
Absolutely. For me, it obviously is a very personal question. I think everybody gets going with EDGY the way they are used to. But for me, it was about reading the documentation once, not understanding probably the quarter of it. But I was like, okay, this looks interesting. I don't think I can apply this now because there's a lot of things to be applied. But it was downloading the EDGY stencils in Miro. And after that, it was getting into my field of work and just mapping out what I think I understand of what's going on in EDGY, and then analyzing the overall things. It just started like that, to answer your question, Max. It was in the middle of a big meeting, as I was mentioning. I was just being introduced by EDGY, by Jean-Sébastien. And after one meeting, I already learned things. I understood things differently. Even if I didn't talk to anyone in the room, I was just mapping things that I was hearing and seeing. And then I was like, okay, this is the way we should be going. So you never really know what's the starting point, but when you map it out, it really helps build that pathway that we're talking about. So for me, it was really like that. And then it was focusing on several activities that the EDGY stencil was also providing me context with, like, for example, journey mapping, being able to articulate a brand into several elements. Also, the purpose portfolio is something that I've been using a lot because many organizations, they want to do a lot of things in their missions. But when it comes to prioritizing and focusing on one and putting one number one, one number two, one number three, one number four, this is super tough for them. So when you provide a framework for people, even if they're not cognizant of EDGY at all, or if you're not cognizant, just being able to do a portfolio of these things. This is exactly, by the way, what I did with the last case. The last case is an elite sports ecosystem. It's an athlete health platform who manages the health of all the biggest athletes in the world for basketball, baseball, hockey, football, American football, tennis, golf, surf, all the biggest names in the industry. And they wanted to build their next product, which is a great idea. But where do you start? Well, you start by your own identity. What kind of identity you have right now? What kind of identity you want to have in the future? And then by building this portfolio, so to speak, you get to know the company very differently, even if you're not, again, if you're not very cognizant about everything related to EDGY. For me, it really helped understanding it and making people prioritize. This is probably related to the fact that I'm in product management and we are paid to prioritize things that people don't want to prioritize. But at the end of the day, for decision making, it was very instrumental. Even if you don't have necessarily all the different knowledge and experience, I think the framework helps you get the conversations going, but not going in only one direction. They help you going into all directions. So the last case really is, as I was mentioning, we did the portfolio of everything that was happening in the business, what we call the EDGY PRD, product requirement definition. When you come to build a new product or a new feature, there's usually tons of statements that you need to do, but they are mostly product-centric or organization-centric. They're not necessarily user-centric. So I broke down this very usual document that people use in product management, but I built it with EDGY perspective, right? What should we ask the clients? What should we have as a stakeholder at our table? What are the things that we want to do as a company? What are how is our brand linked to this overall feature or product? Is it different? Is it better? Is it more advanced? Is it the same target? Who are we talking to, basically? So these type of things were super instrumental for me, as much as when I was doing the research, I was listening to interviews of all the different stakeholders talking about their overall priorities. And I was, again, mapping them into EDGY because it gives a common language with all these different aspects. And even for, that sounds as crazy as it gets, but they did from Jira to Azure DevOps migration. And even then, when we were building all the different aspects for how we're going to be using Azure DevOps, I was figuring out how, from the research and from the EDGY PRD, how we can instrumentalize this into Azure DevOps so that we have the different dimensions that are always related to the overall research. Because if you ask a lot of companies, they all use Jira and Confluence, but sometimes they use very different language, right? A user research person will not have the same language than a developer. So we need to fix that so that there are less gaps, so that people can understand better themselves when they're workshopping on the new features. And it is super critical because when you get to this level of complexity, like this was a very complex business I was working with. One of the key stakeholders was the leagues, the different sports leagues with their lawyers at the head of all the different projects and budget. We were having the users of our platform, which was the practitioner, the doctors that take care of the health of the athletes, so that the athletes do not get into legal problems, they do not get into financial throw, because an athlete who does not perform, who does not play, is an expense, right? So again, the players in their school were also part of this because these are the ones that really gather a lot of data that is not in the mix. And this is something that we were looking at as much as the sports science markets overall, because every single data point that can be used for research, training, strength and conditioning, performance, everything related to health, all these data, there was a whole market and a whole ecosystem that we needed to map and understand better. So honestly, whether it's a super complex project like this one, or as I was mentioning here with Turco, it's a solopreneur friend who just say, hey, I have too much opportunities on the table. What should I do? My suggestion to you, Max, or anyone who is not familiar with EDGY, is start mapping out things. And then when you start mapping, you will understand different things about the business, but also about EDGY. And as you go through, you will start implementing the thing that you didn't really understand or didn't really figure out how to use the first time you read the documentation. Like the documentation for EDGY, I think I read it 4 times. Every time it's like watching the Ascension movie. Every time I listen to it, I see something different. I go into another level of details and insights that I can gather from this. So you start slow, you start small, you start with what you know. That's also a good advice that some people, Eric and Jean-Sébastien, told me. If you're more familiar with architecture, start with architecture. The number one thing that you need to be good at is not stay in that field. You have to go into all the different dimensions that we see here, right? So if you start by process, fine. How does it work with the capabilities that you're building? And those capabilities, are they translated in the products that you want to sell, or the offering that you want to do? And are they related? Then you go and you map out things, and you will learn a lot of things about your enterprise. And just because I see the time, I don't want to keep everyone too long. A good example of that is the conference that I will be giving in Rome in September, which is called From Product Capabilities to Enterprise Roadmap, where we really started with, hey, we need to build product capabilities, we need to ship something, we need to make money, and we need to do it fast to, oh, actually, even if we do build those features, it's not helping us getting the outcomes that we want to do or that our NGO wants to do. So then we look at the NGO, we look at the ecosystem, we look at ourselves, we look at the task, we look at the purpose that we want to do to the world, we look at the organization, we look at the capabilities we want to build, how the brand fits in all this, and then you ship, and then you decide the features that you want to build so that we get all at the finish line. So this will be the subject that I will be covering in Rome. And that's it for me. Thank you, everyone. If you have questions, obviously.
Yeah, I think I stopped the recording now. So to complete the official presentation.